Ladies, gentlemen, you've made it to 2025, not by luck, not by chance, but by choice. This version of you, it wasn't born out of comfort, it was forged in discipline, in sacrifice, in relentless focus. The old you was surviving, but this version is thriving. You had moments when quitting seemed easier, when it felt like nobody understood your grind, your vision, your heart, but you kept going. You kept pushing. You said, I'm not built to settle, I'm built to rise. This new version of you doesn't wait for motivation, you move with purpose. You don't need applause, you don't need validation. You are driven by mission, you show up even when it's hard, you execute even when it's uncomfortable. You've turned pain into power, doubt into dominance. Remember the days you prayed for the things you have now. The strength, the clarity, the discipline, you didn't just dream it, you earned it. Through every late night, every early morning, every time you chose growth over excuses. You used to chase goals, now you set standards. You don't just want success, you expect it. You've upgraded your habits, you've elevated your circle, you've silenced every voice that said you couldn't, including your own. This version of you is focused. Hungry, unstoppable, you're not looking back because the rear view has nothing for you. You've outgrown who you were, you've stepped into who you were born to be, so keep climbing, keep building, keep evolving. Because this is only the beginning. 2025 didn't change you, you changed you. You are the new version and the world better be ready. You didn't become this new version of yourself by accident. It didn't just happen one morning when you woke up in 2025. This transformation was a decision, a bold, relentless, painful, and empowering decision. Every step that brought you here was built on a choice. The choice to not remain who you were. The choice to leave behind comfort. The choice to silence every excuse, every distraction, and every voice that whispered you can't. While others waited for the right moment, you created it. While others were dreaming, you were building. While others were talking about what they could be, you were already becoming it. That's what separates the old you from the new you choice. There was nothing magical about the journey. It was messy. It was exhausting. It was uncertain, but you stayed in it. You stayed committed to your growth. That's what most people don't understand. Greatness doesn't come from motivation. It comes from discipline. And discipline is uncomfortable. It's lonely. It's quiet. It's those early mornings when you don't feel like getting up. It's those nights when everyone else is relaxing, but you're still grinding. You didn't evolve into this version because someone handed it to you. You chose the process. You chose the struggle. You chose the hard path because you knew easy never built anything worth keeping. And you made these choices not once, but every single day. You chose to say no to distractions. You chose to say no to mediocrity. You chose to separate from people who didn't see your vision. You chose to trust in something deeper, something inside you that kept saying, there's more for me, I'm not finished, I'm not even close. This new version of you is a product of all those micro decisions, the little choices that no one clapped for, no one praised, no one even noticed, but you noticed. You knew what you were doing. You knew you were crafting a higher standard. There were times when no progress was visible, but you still kept moving. Times when the temptation to go back to the old version, the one who stayed quiet, the one who stayed comfortable, the one who played small, was real. But you said no. Again and again you chose growth over familiarity. You chose pain that built you over pleasure that weakened you. The new you didn't just show up, it was carved out like stone with fire, pressure, and relentless force. That's what people won't see. They'll see the results. They'll see the confidence, the clarity, the strength, but they won't see the nights of doubt, the internal battles, the moments when you cried but kept going. They won't see the internal wars that no one talks about, but you lived it. You felt every bit of it, and still you never folded. This version of you stands tall not because life became easier, but because you became harder to break. Your mind became sharper, your heart became stronger, your spirit became louder, and none of it was a gift. You earned it. Every inch of progress, every upgrade in mindset, every level of resilience, it was all a result of your choices. Your decisions shaped your destiny. You didn't follow the crowd. You separated yourself. You accepted being misunderstood. You were okay being doubted. You didn't need everyone to get it. You just needed to keep going. You understood that becoming more meant leaving behind more. It meant shedding layers, letting go of habits, releasing patterns that no longer served your purpose, and that process was painful but necessary. You made the decision that the old version of you had done enough, it served its time, but it wasn't made for where you're going, so you buried that version. You laid it to rest with gratitude, but no regret. Because now you've stepped into something greater, a new version of you, one that was not born from chance, but from choice, repeated, consistent, powerful choice. And that's what made all the difference. Pain was never the enemy, it was the teacher. It was the fire that refined you, not the force that destroyed you. In moments when life broke you down, when everything inside of you wanted to stop, you didn't retreat, you transformed. The pain that tried to paralyze you became the very power that pushed you forward. Every heartbreak, every failure, every setback, you didn't let them define you. You let them build you. You made a decision that most never do. You chose to feel it, face it, and use it. Pain has a voice. It speaks in silence. It screams in moments of weakness, but instead of running from it, you leaned into it. You stopped asking, why me, and started saying, watch me rise. Watch me evolve. Watch me become something no one saw coming, not even me. You refused to waste your pain. Instead, you harvested its energy and turned it into power. That's where real strength comes from, not when life is easy, but when it's hard and you still rise anyway. People don't realize what it takes. They see your confidence now, they see your fire, your strength, your clarity, but they don't see the chapters filled with silence, struggle, and suffering. They don't see you wrestling with your own doubt, with the fear, with the weight of expectations that crushed your chest every morning. But you pushed through. You didn't just survive pain, you grew from it. You didn't just endure hard times, you allowed them to sharpen you, to stretch you, to show you what you were made of. There were moments when it felt like life was falling apart, but in truth, it was falling into place. You were being broken, not to be destroyed, but to be rebuilt. Stronger, wiser, louder, sharper. Pain stripped away the version of you that was pretending, the version that was playing small, the version that was scared to speak, scared to move, scared to try. That version couldn't survive the fire, but you did. You came out on the other side, not just intact, but transformed. It wasn't just the big moments, sometimes it was the small ones. The days when you got up with a heavy heart, but still chose to show up. The nights when you cried, but kept moving forward. The mornings when you questioned everything, but still took the next step. That's where your power was forged, in the shadows, in the quiet battles, in the parts of your story no one will ever know about. You became dangerous, not in a destructive way, but in a way that made it clear. You won't be shaken. You won't be broken. You've been through too much to fold now. Pain taught you how to breathe under pressure, how to stay calm in chaos, how to trust yourself when everything else was uncertain. That's power, that's unshakable strength, and you didn't become bitter. That's what separates you from the rest. Pain didn't harden your heart, it sharpened your vision. It focused your mind, it purified your purpose. Instead of asking for an easier path, you asked for a stronger back, and you got it. You carried the weight. You walked through the fire. You refused to let pain turn into excuses. You transformed it into fuel. You learned how to channel it. Every moment that hurt became a reminder of what you could overcome. It became evidence of your resilience, proof that nothing outside of you holds more power than what's inside of you. And that shift, that mental shift, is what changed everything. You no longer feared the hard times. You started welcoming them. Not because you enjoy pain, but because you've learned it reveals truth. It exposes weakness and forces strength to rise. It brings clarity. It cleans the soul. It burns away everything fake and leaves only what's real. And what's real is that the power you carry now was born from every scar, every bruise, every silent scream. You turned your pain into a weapon, and now nothing hits harder than you. You stopped waiting for motivation. That fire that used to flicker in and out, depending on your mood, depending on your circumstances, it doesn't control you anymore. Because now you understand something deeper. Motivation is temporary. It comes and goes like the wind, but purpose is unshakable. Purpose is the anchor. Purpose is what makes you move when everything around you tells you to stop. That's the shift that created the new version of you. You don't operate based on how you feel, you operate based on what needs to be done. There were days when your body was tired, your mind was heavy, and your heart wasn't in it. And still you showed up, not because you were motivated, but because you were connected to something greater than a feeling. You had a vision, you had a mission, you had a reason. That's what purpose does. It wakes you up before the alarm. It drives you when no one is watching. It makes you keep your promises to yourself even when no one would know if you broke them. You started moving like your life depended on it because in some ways it did. Staying the same was no longer an option. Quitting was no longer on the table. You were either going to grow or get left behind. People talk about motivation like it's magic. They wait for the right video, the right song, the right moment to feel hyped up. But you learn the truth the hard way. Those things can spark you, but they can't sustain you. You can't build an empire on hype. You can't transform your life with temporary emotion. What carries you is purpose. And that only comes from getting clear on who you are, what you want, and what you're willing to go through to get it. Purpose is what made you stay disciplined when motivation disappeared. It made you do the reps, make the call, write the page, take the step, even when it was boring. Even when it was uncomfortable, even when it was lonely. Purpose doesn't need excitement, it needs commitment. That's where you changed. You stopped relying on momentum and started creating consistency. You didn't need a crowd to cheer you on. You didn't need someone to remind you. You reminded yourself every single day. And that's the part nobody talks about, how quiet it gets when you're building something real. Motivation is loud, purpose is silent. It doesn't show up with fireworks and energy, it whispers. It reminds you why you started, it grounds you in the middle of chaos. It centers you when distractions try to pull you away. And you listened to that whisper, you tuned out the noise, turned down the volume of the world, and locked in. That shift from chasing highs to embracing purpose made you unstoppable. You became consistent. Relentless. You stopped breaking promises to yourself. You stopped waiting to feel like it, and started becoming the kind of person who does it no matter what. That's a different level of power. That's a different kind of discipline. And that's why your life started to change. When others slowed down, you kept your pace. When others got distracted, you stayed dialed in. You built habits that made success automatic. You rewired your mind to associate effort with progress, not pain. And every time you wanted to quit, every time your body begged you to stop, your purpose said, keep going, we're not done. You trusted that voice, you obeyed that voice, and now that voice is your identity. It's who you are. You don't chase quick fixes. You don't need someone to drag you out of bed or convince you to work. You don't rely on moods, you rely on mission. You've become the kind of person who moves because the work is part of who you are now. Your actions are no longer reactive, they are intentional. Your decisions don't come from a place of comfort, but from a place of calling. That's why people look at you differently now. It's not luck. It's not hype. It's not some sudden change. It's the result of choosing purpose over pleasure, every day without compromise. That's what separates the old you from the new you. The new you doesn't move with motivation. The new you moves with meaning. There was a time when you chased goals, hoping they would make you feel fulfilled. You set targets, milestones, numbers, thinking once you reached them, everything would finally fall into place. But every time you got there, the satisfaction didn't last, the excitement faded, the wind felt hollow. That's when the shift happened. That's when you realized goals aren't enough. Goals can be moved, missed, even manipulated. But standards are who you are, and that's what changed everything. You stopped chasing goals. You started raising your standards. The new version of you doesn't need a deadline to act. You don't need external pressure to perform. You've hardwired your actions to meet a certain level no matter what. You don't negotiate with yourself. You don't ask, do I feel like it today? The answer is automatic. You show up because it's who you are. You execute because your standards won't allow anything less. That's the difference now. It's not about what you want to achieve someday, it's about what you expect of yourself every day. People don't understand this level of discipline. They see you doing the work, being consistent, staying locked in, and they think you're obsessed with results, but you're not. You're obsessed with standards. You've set a baseline so high that anything beneath it feels like disrespect to your own potential. You don't need someone to hold you accountable. You are the standard, and that internal shift has made you dangerous in the best way possible. When you were focused on goals, you were chasing numbers. Now that you live by standards, you're building character, and character never fades. Character never depends on circumstances. You're not just working when it's convenient, you're working because it's a reflection of who you've become. Your habits are automatic now. Excellence is your default setting. That didn't happen overnight. It took time, it took repetition. It took rewiring your mind to understand that success is not a destination, it's a lifestyle. And that lifestyle is rooted in consistency, not intensity. Anybody can work hard for a few days, stay motivated for a few weeks, post results for a few months, but only the few can sustain excellence year after year. Because only the few have standards that don't bend, you became one of those few. You chose consistency over convenience. You chose principles over moods. You chose to live with discipline even when no one was watching. There were moments when everything around you was uncertain, but your standards kept you stable. When people dropped off, when distractions showed up, when life got heavy, you didn't fold. Because your decisions weren't based on circumstances, they were based on identity. You trained yourself to expect more, demand more, deliver more. You built a system within yourself that couldn't be shaken by external noise. That's why now you're not easily impressed. You're not chasing applause. You're not looking for shortcuts. You're not settling for good enough. Because you know what it took to become this version of you. You know how many internal battles had to be won. You know the level of self-control, self-talk, and self-trust it required to raise your standards and actually live by them. Every single day, you learn to say no, no to distractions, no to laziness, no to mediocrity, and most importantly, no to the old version of you. That version had limits. That version accepted comfort. That version allowed inconsistency, but not anymore. You rewrote the script. You set a higher bar. You stopped accepting behavior from yourself that didn't match your vision, and the more you did it, the more natural it became. Now everything you do has intention behind it. You train, you work, you speak, you move all in alignment with the standard you've set. You don't lower the bar to meet the day. You raise the day to meet your bar, and that mindset shift created momentum that doesn't stop. Not because you're chasing some temporary goal, but because you've committed to permanent growth. Standards became your foundation. They turned your someday a mindset into a right now, a lifestyle. You no longer perform based on you perform based on what's expected. And what's expected? Nothing less than the absolute best version of you every single time. There came a point when you stopped waiting for people to clap for you. You stopped looking over your shoulder to see who was watching. You realized the most powerful validation doesn't come from others, it comes from within. You no longer needed likes, shares, comments, or applause to keep going. You looked in the mirror and decided that was enough. You became your own motivation, your own accountability, your own audience. That shift gave you the freedom to grow without limits. It freed you from needing permission to rise. In the past, you may have held yourself back because you wanted approval. You wanted people to understand you, to believe in you, to support your vision, but not everyone will and not everyone can. That used to sting. It used to make you question yourself, but not anymore. Now you understand that your value isn't tied to how loud others cheer. Your mission isn't validated by the attention it receives. The truth is, most people won't get it. They won't see the full picture. They'll only see the highlight reel, never the grind behind it. And that's okay because you stopped building for visibility. You started building for impact. You stopped chasing popularity and started chasing purpose. That was the difference. That was the transformation. There was no more need to impress people who don't even know the battles you've fought. No need to explain your path to those who can't see your destination. You stopped looking outward and started looking inward. The moment you stopped needing external validation was the moment you truly became dangerous, not to others, but to your limitations. You started trusting your own voice. The inner voice that told you to keep going, the one that whispered you're built for more, even when nobody else believed it. That voice became louder than the noise around you, and that voice, your voice, became your compass. You stopped second-guessing yourself. You stopped shrinking to make others comfortable. You stepped into your truth fully, unapologetically. It's easy to perform when people are watching, but you performed even when no one saw it. You put in the reps when no one was clapping. You made sacrifices when no one was celebrating. You gave your best when no one was applauding. That's what changed you. That's what elevated you. You didn't need validation to stay consistent. You didn't need approval to believe in your mission. You were rooted in purpose, and that purpose gave you strength the world couldn't give and couldn't take away. You started moving differently. You stopped asking, will they like it? And started asking, is this aligned with my vision? That small shift changed everything. It gave you clarity. It gave you power. It removed the pressure to perform for others and replaced it with the responsibility to fulfill your own potential. And that responsibility became sacred. You held yourself to it even when no one else did. There was a time you might have posted, shared, created, or spoken just to be seen, but now you create to serve, you speak to elevate, you move with purpose, not performance. People may or may not notice, but it doesn't matter anymore, because you've realized the most important person who needs to believe in you is you. You show up now because you owe it to yourself. You do the work because it's a reflection of your standards, not a response to someone else's praise. There's a different kind of energy in someone who is self-validated. They don't rush, they don't panic, they're not desperate to be seen because they see themselves clearly. You walk with that energy now. That calm, focused, steady energy. You don't need to prove yourself, you are yourself. Every room you enter, every step you take, every word you speak, it all comes from a place of certainty, not arrogance. Not ego, just truth. That truth was born from silence, from rejection, from being overlooked. But instead of letting it break you, you used it to build deeper confidence, quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't seek the spotlight but earns it anyway. You stopped performing for the crowd and started performing for the calling, and that calling comes from within. Now you walk forward without waiting. You don't hesitate. You don't ask for validation. You don't chase approval. You move, because your worth isn't defined by who notices, it's defined by who you've become. And who you've become is someone the world can no longer ignore, even if you no longer need them to notice. You didn't stop at becoming better. You understood that this is just the beginning. You never let progress turn into comfort. You never let growth become a finish line. You saw every level you reached as a new starting point, not a final destination. That mindset is what separates people who peak once from those who evolve endlessly. You trained yourself to never settle, to stay hungry, to stay in motion, because deep down you know the journey doesn't end with one transformation. It keeps demanding more from you. The new version of you carries lessons, scars, strength, but also responsibility. A responsibility to keep climbing. You've built momentum, and now you refuse to stop. You understand that just because you've come far doesn't mean you've reached your limit. You haven't even scratched the surface of what you're capable of. There's more inside you, more potential, more power, more purpose. And now that you've tasted what it feels like to level up, there's no going back. You've made it a part of your identity, and your identity is always reaching, always evolving. Most people hit a goal and relax. They ease up. They celebrate and stall, but not you. You've rewired your mindset to see achievement not as the end, but as an invitation to the next level. You live in the mindset of elevation. You see opportunity everywhere, in discipline, in discomfort, in adversity. You stopped waiting for perfect moments and started creating momentum through relentless action. Even on the hard days, even when you don't see results, you keep going, because you know forward is forward, and greatness is a series of invisible, silent, unglamorous steps that build into something unstoppable. You carry the mindset of someone who is already in motion. You don't look around wondering if you're doing better than others. You don't measure your value by comparison. You're too focused on who you are becoming. Every version of yourself you leave behind becomes fuel, not because you hate who you were, but because you respect your own evolution enough to not remain the same. That's what growth really is, gratitude for your past and hunger for your future, both existing at the same time. And now you move with a different energy, a different pace. You don't flinch when challenges come. You don't freeze when it gets hard. You recognize the signs of growth. You've trained yourself to lean in when others pull back. You see resistance as a doorway. You use pressure as fuel. You don't wish for easy, you expect difficult and prepare for it. Because every level of your life requires a deeper version of you, a more refined version. A version that's willing to let go of comfort again and again. You've become relentless, but not just in doing more and becoming more. You work on your mind, you guard your habits, you protect your time. Because you've seen what happens when you stop protecting your progress. You've lived the consequences of slipping into old patterns. You don't just want change, you want to sustain it, and that means staying in motion even when you feel like resting. That means committing to evolution when no one's clapping. That means seeing progress as a path, not a prize. Every win you've earned was the result of hundreds of unseen sacrifices. You carry those with you like armor now. Not to boast, but to remind yourself what it takes, so you never forget, so you never stop. Because you know that when you stop growing, you start dying, and you didn't come this far to start falling backwards. You've become obsessed with becoming the next best version of yourself. Not for applause, not for attention, but because your vision demands it. Your purpose requires it. The truth is, you are capable of more than even you can imagine. But you'll only access that if you keep moving forward, if you treat every ending as a beginning, every achievement as preparation. You've stepped into a chapter of your life where the question is no longer, can I change? It's, how far can I go? And the answer, if you stay hungry, stay focused, stay in motion, is limitless. You are no longer who you were, and you're not done becoming who you're meant to be. This version of you was built, not born. Forged through pain, elevated by purpose, and sustained by discipline. You don't move with noise, you move with meaning. You've replaced excuses with execution, replaced comfort with clarity, and replaced goals with unshakable standards. And now you walk with power, not because of what you've accomplished, but because of who you've become. This is the new you. This is 2025, and the world hasn't seen your final form yet. Keep rising. Keep evolving. You're just getting started.